Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the DFS Minute. I'm your host, Michael Rathburn, aka Rath. You can hit me up on Twitter at FantasyWrath. Welcome into rotocurve.com. And interesting schedule yesterday as we had all the day games for Wednesday, and there was a ton of runs going around, and aces did come through. So it was a happy day in DFS. It was a very high-scoring day, so you could have put up a high score and still not finish in the money. But I do know that our team at RotoCurve had a pretty successful day, and giving out the recommendations and things that we did. So it was definitely good to see. And if you were able to jump in, there was some overlay in the industry early in the afternoon. So that was also, and it's something I talked about last week, and it's something I'm going to continue to talk about. You're going to continue to see overlay, in my opinion. That's the end of the month. I don't think sites are going to scale back all that much. I think they're going to continue to push the envelope, hoping they get the entries. And then we're going to see what happens in June. So just be aware of that. Talk about a little bit yesterday in terms of what went down in the industry. A lot of talk about multi-entry again, coming off of the mega payoff pitch on DraftKings where Max Stillary had 888 entries. I'm not sure if he did that on purpose, 888, but he had 888 entries. I believe he put in around $25,000 to $30,000 worth of entries, retail. We're not sure. I'm sure he definitely won a lot of seats through satellites, but he did win, and I think he cleared about 175K from what I read. So, that definitely sets off the multi-entry firestorm once again. And it's like a split, divided camp. I mean, you've got guys that say, hey, look, he's playing within the rules. What he's doing is skill. And if it weren't for guys like him filling these contests, we wouldn't have $1 million GPPs. I get that. From a site perspective, I get it too. I posted about this in the forum. I'm not blaming the sites here. Although I have, I have been vocal about the live final situation. But in terms of the GPPs and things like that, look, I think there's some things that if they did, it would probably curb the multi-entry a little bit. Does it matter if the guy had 555 entries, 888 entries? I really don't know. But, for me, I'm more frustrated with stacking than I am multi-entry, to be honest with you. That's just my opinion. I don't like stacking, but that's the way that you have to play tournaments if you're firing multi-entry, because that's the most optimal lineup to win. So that's kind of my take on it. I jumped on with Mike Hofeld last night on his podcast. He's going to put that up today. So definitely be aware and look out for that. Him and I spent about an hour talking about the industry yesterday, and it's always good. He's a really good guy. He goes by the name FCK, Fishcake King. Very outspoken, very opinionated, but also very on point with a lot of what he says. So him and I do share somewhat of the same opinion. I mean, definitely have differing opinions on certain things, but definitely a good guy to talk to in the industry. And I'm really glad that him and I get to spend about an hour. And we're going to be doing future podcasts together because there's a lot that I would like to talk about, the behind-the-scenes part of DFS, working for a DFS site, what went into it in the beginning, where it started, things like that. So definitely something that I'm looking forward to, and hopefully we can carve out some time here to do it. In regards to the multi-entry, there's a lot of Twitter battles going on right now. There's a lot of talk on SiriusXM. I did talk about it a little bit on my Tuesday spot this week. I did Tuesday with the RotoWire guys, and we did bring it up a little bit. And my contention was really, the concern I have is the new player and the perception. And they don't really know about stacking and multi-entry. And then when I explain it to them, kind of my experience has been like they don't like it and they're turned off by it, and then they don't play DFS. So that's been my experience with a handful of guys that have reached out to me that clearly didn't know that was a strategy that was going on. Now that is up to them to go, research DFS and find out what the best ways are to play, and they can look at who wins tournaments. But just speaking as, from an overall perspective in my experience, there are some new players that come in that are kind of turned off by the stacking and the multi-entry in tournaments. A lot of the new guys come in and play, $1, $2, $5, $10, and they don't want to play heads up. They don't want to play 50-50. They want to try to win $1,000, $2,000, $10,000 and they play in tournaments. So that's who we have in the industry right now. So as much as we want to preach play cash games, there is a contention of people that only are going to want to play tournaments because they want to try to shoot for the big money. But that's been my contention with multi-entry. And there was an email that was sent to SiriusXM that talked about what I said on the show, and kind of the guy kind of voiced his agreement and frustration with things in the industry. So, there is a lot of frustration from the smaller player about multi-entry, where they feel like they don't have a chance. And some guys say, well, go play single entry tournaments. Well, there's not many single entry tournaments, and they're not really advertised. So the one thing I will put on the sites is, let's start promoting more single entry tournaments. You don't need to promote multi-entry, and you don't need to promote stacking. Let's promote single entry tournaments and why they're important. It's okay. It's not going to be the end of the world, but I think we need to see more of that. I know I really only try to play single entry tournaments, and that's something that we try to tell you here at RotoCurve, to only play single entry tournaments. Now, we know that's impossible because there's just not many of them out there. But if you're throwing in $1, $2, $3, $5, whatever it is, you're better off in a single entry where it's only 1,000 people, 500, 200 people. You're better off grinding out a $50, $100, a $200 win than chasing $1,000 first prize that you're probably never going to hit. Just grind out the $100 to $200 every day, and don't worry about the 1,000, the 5,000, the 10,000. Just leave that to the other guys and don't worry about it. So that would be my, kind of my take on it. Over on FanDuel today, there's something interesting. We have this strange slate today. We have the White Sox-Baltimore doubleheader, which is at 1 and 4, and then the rest of the games start at 8 and go beyond. So what FanDuel is doing is these all-day slates where they're taking one of the early Chicago game and calling it all day, and they're taking a late Chicago game and calling it all day too. Here's the problem: no late swap on FanDuel. You're not going to know any of these lineups. So I don't really see the advantage to playing any of these slates today because there is no late swap. You're not going to know lineups. And with Thursday games, now the night games aren't as bad, but there could be a lot of crazy, hairy lineups today. And it's a heavy pitching day. So to me, I'm playing late. That's it. I'm not going to fool around with these White Sox-Baltimore games, so I'm not even going to talk about them. What I will talk about is that there's a couple of pitchers that have been brought up that I think are interesting, and one of them is Eduardo Rodriguez from the Red Sox. He's a lefty. He's 22. He's like 6'2", 200. Throws a fastball, a slider, and a changeup, and he's at AAA. Now, the Red Sox got him from the Orioles, and he really wasn't a top prospect. He came over to the Red Sox, and his strikeout rate's gone up, his walk rate's gone down, and he's really developed himself into a pretty good pitching prospect, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's a key piece in a trade that the Red Sox make, maybe for a guy like Cole Hamels, if that does happen. So Eduardo Rodriguez is definitely a guy that people are looking at. His ERA is 2.98 at AAA this year. He's got a 44-7 K to walk rate, which is pretty good, 48 innings. And I looked at his splits on minorleaguebaseball.com, and he destroys lefties. So that's a good sign. Probably not the best spot to use him today in Texas against a pretty good lineup that's hitting well and got some pretty good right-handed beef on that side, especially with guys like Beltre. And maybe even a guy like Kyle Blanks might get in today. So, I'd be a little bit careful with Rodriguez today. He's in a really tough spot, but moving forward, definitely keep an eye on him. He's a kid that you want to keep tabs on. The other guy I'm going to talk about is one of the best names in baseball, and that's Buck Farmer from the Tigers. I love this guy. He's got good numbers. He's a college pitcher. He was drafted a couple years ago in the 5th round. He's like 6'4", 225, so he's got a great frame for pitching. He's a right-handed pitcher. He's 24. ERA is a little high at AAA. It's about 3.8. So the one thing about Farmer is his K to walk is not good. He's got an 8 K per 9 but he's walking 3.5 guys per 9. So the walks need to come down in order for him to be productive at the major league level. But when you have a Tigers offense that's pretty good behind you and you get some good run D, I think Farmer is an interesting GPP play today. He's in LA. It's a pitching environment. The Angels lineup isn't really hitting all that great right now. So, he's a guy that when you look at the slate today, we talk about there's some top heavy pitchers that are really good, but then as far as value goes, I don't want to, even though Paxton's at home and he's pitching great, I don't want to go anywhere near this Indians lineup right now. This Indians lineup to me is just up and down, really solid. So I'm staying away from Paxton. You could make an argument for him on a two-pitcher site in a large field tournament. You feel ownership is going to be low, and perhaps he can continue to hot. He's been really hot. He's been putting up the last 4 weeks. He's been really good. So he's a guy that you want to look at. But I think Farmer is very interesting. He is 4.3 on DraftKings, 5.6 on FanDuel. So more of a play on DraftKings for me as far as the value and the savings. Definitely wouldn't want to roll him out there on a one-pitcher site. Underdog on the road. So, that's a tough spot. Kluber today, at Seattle, run total 6.5. He's a minus 125 favorite. He's 11.6 on DraftKings. He's 10.5 on FanDuel. What I'm starting to see is it looks like the elite guys, the top-tier guys, prices are more expensive on DraftKings now than they are on FanDuel. And the bottom is, the bottom guys are just a lot cheaper. So it looks like what they're doing is they're bumping up the top guys because they're seeing that's where the ownership is and that's where the production is. And the bottom tier guys are just really bottoming out. Whereas on FanDuel, the spread is not so much. So it looks like there's great value on aces on FanDuel, especially because it's only a one-pitcher site. So it absolutely makes sense on FanDuel to continue to pay up for pitching. Do not go cheap unless you just have a great guy like a Noah Syndergaard the other day or something like that. But just continue to pay for pitching on FanDuel the way that this salary structure is set up and format. Now on DraftKings is a little bit different. It's forcing you to not take the top guy, but take the second, third, fourth, fifth guy, and then dig and scrape and look for any kind of value at the bottom, and that's getting really tough. So, I do like Kluber today, even though the price is higher. A.J. Burnett is 10-1 on DraftKings, 9-6 on FanDuel. Now, he's minus 115 at the Padres against Kennedy, 6.5. Kennedy's been horrible lately. I know he's usually better at home, but, man, he's been brutal. So, A.J. Burnett, good. The Padres lineup right now is dead last in baseball over the last 30 days in almost every offensive category. Let's continue to pick. Look what Matt Shoemaker did to him the other day. And he's a guy who's been giving up home runs left and right. So Burnett's in a really good spot today. You could argue Burnett could be in a better spot today than Kluber. He still has the strikeout potential. He gets a National League team, and the Padres just aren't hitting right now. So I definitely like A.J. Burnett. The other guy, and I proceed with caution on him, and he's been awesome. Shelby Miller has been lights out this year. 9-3 on DraftKings, 9-3 on FanDuel, so we get about even money there. He's an underdog at 115 at San Francisco against Heston, who's been knocked around a little bit with a 6.5 run total. Here's the problem with Miller. I don't like going against the Giants. And now you get him at home, and the ballpark definitely suppresses offense, but it's a heavy left-handed lineup. Hunter Pence is back, and this is a team that just gets on base, makes contact, doesn't strike out, draws walks. So for me, I don't like picking on the Giants right now. I'm going to stay away from Miller. Yes, he's a tournament play probably, but not in cash. I think you have to find a way today just to roll with Kluber and Burnett, because almost every single game today outside of Texas-Boston is going to be a low run total and a low game. So why not just bank your pitching, go with Kluber, go with Burnett. It's going to run you around 21-7 on DraftKings. It's a little bit higher than what we expect. However, when I look at projected lineups and I'm thinking about, where there's value, it does look like there's going to be a lot of value today with guys that are hitting at the top of the lineup that have a split edge, meaning left-handed bat against right-handed pitcher or right-handed bat against left-handed pitcher. There looks to be a lot of guys that are going to hit leadoff or second today that have a good split edge, have good pricing. So I think that you're going to be able to find really good value today on hitting that makes it where you can play Kluber and Burnett and not be in a bad shape with your offense. Now, I think what might happen today is because the low run totals and all the pitching, there's going to be not going to be a lot of home runs potentially, at least projected. So there's not a lot of offensive bats out there that you really want to pay up for. But I think like a mid-tier value lineup with a lot of guys hitting at the top of the lineup is going to be the approach today. And bank your two aces in Kluber and Burnett. That's kind of the outlook that I look at so far today. As we get into the research and we see lineups come out, things can always change. But just that's the landscape for me today in DFS baseball. Looking forward to playing tonight. And so that's about it for today. No curve show today as it's Thursday, but we will be active in the forums and in the chat room, so definitely check us out. What I will encourage is if you're going to post a lineup and you want feedback on a lineup, definitely post it in the forums first, because you'll get other people feedback. That's extremely hard to deal with in chat, as chat's fast moving, the screen is moving up, and just let's go with more of a static presentation or feedback. We go in the forum and it's much easier to read. As far as any kind of lineup recommendations and things like that, again, I would just go in the forums. Chat is really good for when lineups come out, and then we start looking at where the value plays are and making decisions on one guy over the other. But it's really hard to kind of deal with picks or lineup suggestions or things like that in chat early in the day until we see lineups come out, and then we can kind of get a gauge on what to do. So that's kind of my advice. So I look forward to talking to you guys today. And as we say here at RotoCurve, stay classy, DFS.